let's get this 99 XCR800 motor together. All right, so there's a few different ways I could go from here. I could start by putting the crank in the crankcases, but I think the first thing I'm going to do is measure the piston side clearance and measure the ring end gap. If that's good, then we'll just get rolling. So let's check that out. Oh yeah, first I did recondition the cylinders, meaning I gave them a dingle ball hone with the correct dingle ball, and had Chet, of course, at Minnesota Motorsports. He vapor honed the whole motor, so that's why it's so clean. So let me show you that ball hone process on the cylinders, and then let's get measuring. So the Nicocil in Hot Donna's cylinders looks pretty good. Well, there's no aluminum showing through. There's some stampings on some of the cylinders as if they've already been re-nicked once. Definitely needs a ball hone though. So I bought a ball hone. If you want to know exactly what it is, it's a 240 grit aluminum oxide ball hone, and the size is 2 7/8. So I had a different ball hone for Brad's Ultra. It's too small for these cylinders. So the process is pretty simple. 2-stroke oil, and we just oil up the cylinders. This is semi-synthetic. I don't have any straight up dyno oil. If I did, I'd use plain dinosaur oil. I don't even know if you can get it anymore. And yep, gonna get some oil on my floor. So this is just an angle plate, part of a machining setup. I got everything clamped. She's pretty rigid. And here we go. Oh wait, let's set the speed. Is that tight? There we go. All right, let's give her a wipe, see how she looks. Definitely going to need the cheaters. She's pretty nice. I think I'll give her one more go around. Give her some more oil. Oh yeah. Real good. Real good. Like new. All right, get you in there for a look. So there you go. Usually you'll see the most wear above the exhaust, and that looks great. Looks good all the way around. All right, one down, 2 more to go. So the honing is done, and the next step is the final cleaning of the bore. And what I was taught as a child is to go to the laundry sink in the basement and use Tide, Purcell, some kind of laundry detergent, and a rag, and really clean these out. So the reason is that'll get the grit from the honing out of all the grooves that you just made by honing. Now, I've been told you can use automatic transmission fluid and just put it on a rag and wipe it. And I ran that experiment. I put it on a rag, I wiped it clean, and then I wiped until I didn't get any more on a white paper towel. Should be good, right? Well, to make sure, I went down to the basement and did my cleaning with the laundry detergent, and I used a white paper towel. I pulled out a lot more grit. So I'm a big believer in the laundry detergent for this job, and whoever is saying to use automatic transmission fluid, they maybe ought to try to run that experiment themselves. So first step of checking your piston skirt to cylinder clearance is, of course, to measure your piston skirts, which we're doing right now. And the factory service manual actually tells you where and how to measure it. Now you do have to know how to run a micrometer, but basically you want to get it so it's just a slip. There isn't a lot of resistance, but there's no play. You don't want to spring the mic open. So use a little ratcheting thing here. You can see this just ratchets, and that prevents you from over tightening. All right, so there's the first piston. I'm going to verify the other two real quick, make sure they all match. All right, the next piston, perfect. Real good. All right, third piston. Yeah, they're all just exactly the same. All right, next we're going to set up the dial bore gauge. All right, so the dial bore gauge is set up, which mostly consists of selecting the right rod and maybe a spacer that goes underneath it to span the gap. And then we need to zero it. And you'll notice I didn't spend a lot of time trying to figure out exactly what size that piston is. That's because I really don't care. What I care about is the relative size of the piston to the cylinder bore. I care what the clearance is. So we get the dial bore gauge in here, and we swing it around, and we look for the low spot. See that? Probably just about off the camera. So I'm swinging it around, looking for the reading that is the most extreme in that direction. So the tightest it could be. And we're going to set the 0 to that, wherever that ends up. All right, I'm satisfied with that. Technically, we're done with the mic for the moment. Okay, so the factory service manual says 0.0027 to 0.0041 side clearance, and there's this sheet that came with the pistons that's calling for 0.0035 to 0.0043. They're not very far out of agreement. Basically, they want a little more clearance on these pistons. So we've got our skirt clearance, and now we just got to find a place to measure it that's not a big problem. So, all right, and just wiggle it around and look for the lowest. And that looks like we're right there at 0.0035. On to the next one. Real close to the 2.7 number there. And the last one, it doesn't really read intense, so I'm interpolating, but it looks like 0.028. So there's nothing I'm really going to do on these. I mean, these are Nicocel. I can't hone them to a bigger size, but luckily they're within spec. They're, on the tight end of the spec, but I'm going to call it good. Side clearance is good. So on to checking ring end gap. All right, ring end gap. The factory is calling for, 12 to 18 thousandths. This says 14 to 22 thousandths, a little looser. Looser's better. You don't want them too tight. So all we're going to do is put the ring in, run it down a little bit with the piston. And then I got my feeler gauge set here, starting with the 12 thousandths. Make sure that slips. I'm just trying to fit it in the gap there. Oh yeah, tons of room on the 12 thousandths. We'll jump up to the 18 and see if that fits or not. The 18 has some slight drag there, and I knocked my ring loop out of square. So I'm just using the piston to square it up. So back to that 18. Just trying to show you guys. Got to square it again. It's very easy to knock it out of square, and you can't measure it when it's out of square. Yeah, the 18's got a slight drag. So that one's at 18 thousandths. 14 is for sure no-go. We'll go back to the 12. Boy, that is tight on the 12. So this one ring, I have to file on it. So how do you file a ring? Very carefully. So I just have a fine file and pinching the ring on it. Actually, I'm just going to hold one end and just hold it very square. Do the same on the other end. And I can't even see that any material came off, which is good. We definitely don't want to get too aggressive on this. All right, we'll check that again. Okay, got that ring square, got the 12th thou gauge, and the 12th thou goes quite easily now, which I like. I'll go to the 14. And the 14 is even going. We'll square that again. I did bump it a little. Yeah, 14. So that little bit of filing got us at least 0.02 of an inch. I mean, it did not take much at all. And the 15 doesn't go. But we're going to go with that. All right, I just thought I'd show you one other thing with these pistons. The pistons that came out of the sled when we took the motor apart, they were also SPI pistons. I mean, everything's identical on these. And the motor had good compression. You know, there was no problem with these pistons, so why not use the same brand of pistons again? That's what I'm going to do. All right, we got some cleaning to do now. So you'll notice that I got a clean towel covering the crank and the pistons and all that stuff. I got to start cleaning vapor hone stuff. So Chet tells me that there could be some grit left behind in some of the blind holes. So you get this little narrow nozzle attachment on my blowgun, and we're going to blow out all the holes and everything else. Here's the guy I brought the XCR800 crank to. Great guy, and for me, local enough that I didn't have to ship it. I could just drive it there. He's located near Cambridge, Minnesota, and he says his website doesn't work anymore, so don't bother with that. All right, back to where we were on the build. So the part of the video where I laid the crank and the cases wasn't usable. So I got this other Ultra bottom end right here, and I thought I'd show you what you need to know on this. So obviously there's some differences, and I'll point them out quick. So this is a 96 Ultra with these seals on it, obviously, and this Ultra oil pump only has 3 lines coming off. The XCR800 actually has 5. It has one going into the bearing here between the middle and the PTO side, and of course there's one on the PTO end. So 5 oil lines on that. So pretty major difference in the cases. And the crank on the XCR, well, it's got a longer stub on it, so the stub's different too. But there are some parts that can interchange. Although Josh Wentworth told me that he thinks the rods on the Ultras are maybe softer than the XCR rods and more prone to getting indentation if you have some sort of detonation. I'll take his word at that, but they do interchange and you can use them in a pinch. So anyways, what I didn't show you was what to do with all the pins on these bearings. And boy, some of these bearings are rusty, but there's a pin right there. And that's not a pin. Where's the pin on this one? Well, some of these bearings have been changed and don't even have pins. Here's one with a pin. So those pins, the question is, what do you do with those pins? So the pins actually fit in these small recesses in the top half of the case. That's where they go. Right there, right there. And I strongly advise that you get them into there, because the magic of these recesses, with the exception of this one, is that they're captured. And if something did happen that was really bad and your pin came out, well, it's not going to get anywhere but in there, except for that one. That one would be bad if that pin came out. Lots of bad things could happen there. So that's what I wanted to show you. All right, so when you lay your crank in, assuming you don't have a rusty crank like this one, and this is just a crank that somebody donated to the channel, so the one bearing doesn't turn. So what you're going to want to do is get all your pins facing more or less the same way. and then drop your pins in on that parting half of the cases. So I'm rotating them all to the exhaust side. Where's the pin on this guy? There it is. So I'm rotating them all to the exhaust side, and of course getting everything lined up. And drop it in. So, like I said, the one bearing's been changed on this one, but you get them all lined up on the exhaust side, and then when you drop your case half on, they're going to line up in those recesses. So, there you go. A little bit of a tap tap. Seated on the dowel pins, and we're done. So that's what I wanted to show you about the crank. Like I said, the footage didn't come out so good before, but now you know. All right, getting ready for the first piston. I like to start in the center. The pin slides real nice, so that's great. I like to get the rings set up on the pins, even though I'll have time to do that again later. I'm going to grab one of our new big end bearings, brand new. Yep, sure feels right. Run that rod to the top. Feed her some oil. So make sure that one end of the clip is at this notch so that you can catch it when you want to disassemble the motor. I know other people have other ideas of where they go, but you know, you're going to want to take the thing apart at some point. Might as well not make it horrible on yourself. All right, that one went in nice. Now for the other side. All right, before I drop this in, I'm going to take a clean paper towel, give it just a little bit of two-stroke love, just so that it's not dry on startup. All right, so make sure your ring gaps are lined up on your pins. And things should go on pretty easy. If they don't force it. Just check for what's wrong and fix it as you go. Usually it'll be your ring was not compressed. And that's what's going on right now. All right, top ring went in. Next ring. There we go. Nice and easy, just like we like it. Cylinder not going on. Because I put it on backwards. That's right. You do have to put the exhaust out the exhaust side. So we'll just do that again. Whoa. There we go. All right. Center done. Magneto next. All right, it's time to torque the cylinder base nuts, and they can be a bear. I mean, there's really not a lot of access in there. So my buddy Mike turned me on to this Motion Pro torque adapter that you use with your torque wrench. And I'll show you this the long way, and I'll show you this way. I'm not sure you're going to be able to read it either way, but this is how you use that adapter. It's got a little formula, and the long and short of it is that these nuts call for 25 foot-pounds, and when you're using this adapter, you keep it in line with the wrench, and you set the wrench for 21. So let's do that. Can't really lock the torque wrench. but it is set for 21 foot-pounds. There we go. I will put a link in the description so you can go buy this if you need it. And don't forget, these awesome instructions come with it. They're extremely valuable. All right, let's talk about the O-ring that goes on here for a second. I doubt you're going to be able to see this, but my best measurements show that everything in every kit is a 16th cross-section O-ring. And I ended up going out on Amazon. I had to buy a bag of 100, but there's supposed to be a 2mm cross-section O-ring, which is a pretty significant difference. This is 62 thou across, and this is 80. It's a lot thicker, and this is a metric motor. There's no way this motor came with this English O-ring on it. So, anyways, I ended up going and hunting out and finding my own O-rings, and they fit better, and seems to have ended all my problems. You do have to lube the O-ring before you put the pump on. I'm just going to give it just a little bit of that 2-stroke oil. I mean, whatever you got will work. Wipe off the excess because I don't really need that getting in the coolant. And let's put the pump on. All right, there's my gasket from the kit. Here's my bolts. Here's my pump Tim rebuilt. I will put Tim's card up here. Tim likes to rebuild water pumps. And once again, my organizing paid off. That says H2O pump. So you do have one really long bolt that goes through here. You probably remember that from when we tore the motor down. A couple dowel pins that locate the motor, or the pump onto the motor. And they help locate the gasket as well. One more thing on these pumps. If you're working on an XCR700 or 800, there's a specific pump. That fastener, this is a cheap Chinese pump, but that fastener is in the same spot it is on an Ultra pump. And you can see it was rubbing on the exhaust pretty hard. The correct one has the fastener over here. It actually comes out the other side of the pump, so it doesn't rub on the exhaust. Important thing to know if you're working on an XCR800 or 700. All right, moving on to the cylinder heads. So these are O-ringed and they're dowel pinned in place. So you can see I've already placed the O-rings on the cylinders. And see where your dowel pin holes are. And these are marked N. All right, these are 8mm cylinder head bolts, so they go to 18. All right, it's time for the head covers. So the first thing we got to do is get the old O-rings out. Nothing to it. The old one's out, the new one's on. Give them a little slip and slide. All right, back to the pick. Kind of nice, these head covers are O-ringed on too. Some little tabs to help you line them up in the right spot. And just press them into the groove. All right, it's oil pump time. And the O-ring. New O-ring in the kit. And no, I didn't get all fussy and dig up a metric on this one. It was nice when you can feel the O-ring compress a little. You know, you get a good seal when that happens. All right, so this pump's got 2 Phillips screws that hold it on, and well, this is how I torque them. One more thing I should show you, and I did this a while ago, so maybe I'll insert this earlier in the video, but I wire tied that oil pump lever way up there. And the reason is it actually hangs below the motor on this, and I've actually bent it. So fixed now, and not going to give me any trouble. When I install the throttle cable, I'll cut that wire tie. Well, I had Chet blast these motor mounts, and I'm glad he did, because otherwise I wouldn't have found that big crack. Holy cow. That's no good. Got to fix that or find another strap or something. That is no good. All right, so, well, I'm waiting for that motor mount strap thing to figure itself out. Hopefully it does. We got some goodies. We got the V-Force 3 reeds for this thing. And I'm quite excited about that. So let's go ahead and get after that. Love them. We used these years ago when we set up Brad's XCR Ultra, that monoblock XCR that we put the Ultra motor in. And we liked them on that, that's for sure. So I don't know why we wouldn't use them here. And we got this bag of stuff that we're only going to use the boots and the bolts. These old reeds, if you remember from the teardown video, junk. Let's see, we need the brackets too. All right, getting ready to work on exhaust valves. And boy, some of this stuff's a mess. So I had Chet at Minnesota Motorsports blast those blocks. This block was the one that was the most chowdered up of the old one. Oh, why do you have 4, you're wondering? Well, let me dig out an answer to why I have 4. Let's see. 1, 2, 3. Sure enough, 4. So you see I bagged them up individually to keep them from getting nicked up. Here's the one that was by far the worst. What a pile. Okay? And it's cracked. It's cracked right there. I didn't even bother cleaning the backside once I found the crack. So I had to buy an exhaust valve off of eBay. And I'll clean these a little more. They're not quite there yet. Need to probably throw away these old rubbers because, of course, we're replacing those. Yeah, we'll just go right to the garbage with those. They're disgusting. And we got the good old caps. Oh, yeah, 4th rubber because I bought one off of eBay. Grab some hardware out of here. Got excess hardware, which is good. Make sure that chowdered up valve doesn't end up in the good pile. I don't think I could possibly mistake it. This block was pretty chewed up. The rest of them, yeah, they're going to pass. They've been cleaned enough. I can tell they're not cracked. And they're good to go. All right. Back after I've done some cleaning. All right. Very important step in cleaning these. It's a tiny air passage. You got to make sure that's clear. If it doesn't, your valve is just not going to work. I'm just using a welding tip cleaner. And I'll tell you, I tried blowing through these holes on these, and there was at least one that was clogged. Snowtech Magazine has a great article on the XCR800, and I'll put a link to it in the description. But in it is an illustration of the patent. So I'm showing you the cover page, and then Figure 4 shows how this really works. So there's a tiny hole in the cylinder, and that hole leads up to the underside, the engine side of that rubber diaphragm. And, well, we'll take it from there on the video. All right, so let's talk about how these work. So there's the hole in the cylinder I showed you earlier, right above the exhaust port, which goes through this block, and it's on the underside of the diaphragm. So that cylinder pressure is actually pushing this out, and it's just the diaphragm, and then there's a spring underneath each of these that returns it. And believe it or not, Polaris still makes these springs. 704 1786-09. At least they made them a couple months ago when I bought these. All right, so you can see I got all my exhaust parts laid out, and we're going to start putting it together, give it a little bit of lube. I know it calls for the gold, and I'm using the blue. It'll be fine. So up goes on the side with the dowel pin, and it literally says 79 up. So you know you got the right slide for the right motor. Got some oil coming through there. That's a good thing. Wipe off the excess a little bit. Okay, now you got this beveled washer, then your cup, and then I'm going to Loctite it. All right, back with my Loctite. Doesn't take much. Whoa, that's a lot. That will more than do it there. Plus I have a little bit of a mess to clean up now. All right, we'll get that off the bellows. All right, so stick the bellows on. And we will go torque these. Not over torque, just torque. So once again, this is all in the factory service manual. It shows you everything you need to know. All right. Make sure that this shoulder is in the hole in the bellows, that it's not pinching on the bellows. One last piece of business before we start installing these. There's an O-ring under each of these, and yep, one was torn. But of course, when you buy a full engine kit, you get some fresh O-rings. Oop, second one that was torn here, it looks like. Yep. Ooh, chunky pieces. All right, we'll go do some brake cleaner, clean these out, and O-rings and caps and the whole works. All right, got my 3 new O-rings, which is pretty easily told because 2 were broke and 1 was almost broke. So the 3 fresh ones are easily identified. We're going to set these flush because that is what the manual recommends. Flush for trail riding. Says you might tighten them up for drag racing. If you don't have a factory service manual, highly recommend you purchase one. Oh, I don't like that cap. There's no snap to that cap. Good thing I have a 4th one that I purchased. So I had to buy a whole exhaust valve setup because the one was broke. The one had a crack anyways that I showed you. So we'll clean this up and we'll use this one. All right, this one I can feel the clicks, so that's a good thing. Set it up just like the others. Pretty much is. All right, that is above flush though, so it's either another half or full turn. All right, that is just flush. Just flush. Just flush. All right. Time to start installing. This is the easy part. This is the fun part. Cleaning those super dirty slides, that was no fun. Valve doesn't sit quite shut on this. Flip it over, maybe that'll be better. Yep, there we go. Little things. Hey, I changed something. I realized I did something wrong. Do you see it? I'll give you a clue. Yeah, I had those water jacket covers on backwards. All right, time for some fresh springs and put those covers on. All right, so here's a case where my organization on teardown pays off. I know which flange is which. That is the PTO flange. This is the center, as you can see. All right, looking pretty clean. Not a lot of scrapage to do, but there's a little bit. We'll go scrape these up and I'll be back. All right, exhaust flanges are on the way I think they go, but I'm not going to torque them until it's actually in the sled and the pipes are fitted. Then we'll pull it off one more time, torque all those, and come back. Hope I remember. Crank drain plugs. Don't forget your crank drain plugs. All right, locking in the stator. Make sure you put the right bit in your impact driver It's a number 2 for the oil pump, but it's a 3 for the stator. All right, torquing up the flywheel. Service manual says 60 foot-pounds. Look at this awesome wrench. So Glenn Creedmoor made this. Glenn is a patron, and he sent one to Todd, and he sent one to me. And it's awesome. So I got the old torque wrench set to 60. Oh boy, that's better than the rope in a hole trick. There we go. 60 foot-pounds. Real nice. All right, so we're getting down there. It's recoil time. The recoil had to come apart to get blasted. And I got to rewind the spring. So you got to think about this as you're rewinding the spring. Which way does this hook go? Is it that way? Or is it that way? Well, as you're pulling the rope, and you pull on the rope and it rotates this way, you want it to pull on that spring. So as I pull on the rope, that's going to pull on the end this way. So this is the way it goes. So here goes. We'll just wind up this spring. I know this is one of those things that gives people real big headaches, but it's really not a big deal. Just takes a couple minutes. All right, so we're back. I got my needle nose vice grip. Give a little extra bit of a wind. Ow, now that's digging into my finger. All right. So no matter what you do, you know it's going to loosen up on you as you go. That's just a fact of life. Oops, didn't quite get it clamped. So you do have to wind it a little extra tight. But look, I'm doing this live, real time, so that you guys can see this. That this is not the worst form of torture ever invented by mankind. I'm sure there's something far worse than this. All right. My vice grip needs to get adjusted a little. Let's see if I can get it in there. I'm not sure if the camera can see down in here. It's too loose. Dang it. It's always too loose. Like I said, you can't make it too tight at first anyways. All right. I'm going to put this down on the table. Try to clamp it quick. Still not quite going in. Close. Okay, I think I got it. All right, there we go. So that could have been a lot worse. So now when we drop this in, all right. There we go. So as I wind that, the spring's tightening. So that's all good. Once you get to there, things get a lot easier. Get this bushing that goes in the middle. Thought that seemed a little loose. Get this pawl. There should be one more spring, but it seems to be missing. But there's the spring to kick the pawl back. All right, so I went for a dig in my parts inventory, and I found this 400L ATV recoil, which is remarkably similar with this metal cap and stuff. And let's take a look in there. Maybe that missing spring is in there. Yep, there it is. Otherwise, they're pretty darn close. So here's the spring that got lost. We will just swap that in. All right, I finally got it. And with that little spring in there, it retracts properly. everything's good. So back to the recoil. I ordered in some Polaris rope. 2870621 is the part number. This is the rope Polaris calls for. This is the rope that came off the recoil. It's going to be fine. So let's get it wound up and get it on there. If you remember when I took this sled apart, there was vast amounts of rope. Like well over 8 feet, pushing 9 feet. Well, I'm probably, we're going to see how much fits. So there's 6 feet, and we'll give it a few more. I mean, what's the worst case? I get too much rope, it won't suck it all back in, and I trim off a foot. Oh well. So I just cut the rope with the dikes. Burn the end. Get hot nylon on my fingers. So, when you're playing with the recoil, keep in mind you can only move things one direction, and that's the direction the rope would move it on the way out. If I force it around the other way, the end of the spring's going to come out. So let's get you up even closer, maybe try to give you an even better look on what's going on in here. So, I need my little pick. So let's see if we can get this rope to come out the hole. Oh, nice. Had it coming out. All right, not sure if you could see that, but I just kind of poked the rope down through the hole in the pulley, and I'm using the pick, and I just shoved it out the hole there. Not difficult. All right, we'll stop there and put our knot on the end that needs a knot right now. All right. See, I almost did the sin. But what I'm going to do, I'm going to wind the rope around, winding it in the direction that would, push it out, if you would. And there's a notch in the pulley right here. I've got it right at the opening now. And you just fish a nice loop of rope up through there. And go ahead and use that notch to continue winding. How many winds? Well, I don't know. How many does it take? Depends on your pulley, because this is definitely not the same pulley as, say, an Indy 500. All right, we'll check that at the end of travel one more time. Feels good. Spring didn't go kaflooey. Everything's happy. And that is the maximum rope, because you can see it's like out of the pulley, wedged into the case. So when I actually tie it off in the sled, I'll pull it out a little bit so it's not like rubbing on the case. I'll pull it out yay far, 8-10 inches, and then tie off the handle. Good enough. Put it on the motor. All right, time for motor straps. Can you see the crack there? I'm not sure if you can. It's cracked. This is the original right-hand strap. Patron Mike Fugelberg gave me another one. This is probably out of that Ultra SPX part sled I have, since he ended up with that engine, and these straps are probably on it. It's the right-hand strap that cracked. In this case, I'm told it's usually the left. All right, service manual calls for 48 foot-pounds on these. Challenge to do it by yourself. Oh yeah, before I forget, yep, it's getting the Wall Brothers torque arm. All right, putting on the water log on top next, and even I have my limits. I couldn't reuse these rusty bolts again. I'll use these, and they'll be fine. And just so you know, if you're not sure, those are blind holes. There's no coolant in those. It's time to put the coils on. And conveniently enough, I wrote M, C, and P for Mag, Center, and PTO. But if you didn't, well, there is some hope. That's a white with a blue, and going to the center is a white with a yellow stripe, and the PTO is a white with a green stripe. You could dig around in the factory manual, but there you go. So those are ready to go on. All right, the motor's done, and I feel great about it. Everything checks out. Everything's in spec. Had the crank inspected by JW Snowweld, and he replaced the one bearing in the middle and the PTO bearings. Good to go. Top end, checked out all in spec. It was not cheap, though. So you can do an Indy 500 for way less than this. Of course, it also makes way less power. But let's give you a rundown of the major parts and where I bought them and what I paid. So the pistons, I found a set of 3 SPI pistons on eBay, $208.14. The exhaust valve, I had to buy a replacement exhaust valve because this one in my hand has a crack on it. Well, I ended up buying a whole assembly on eBay, $300. Did I pay too much? I don't know. It was there and I needed it, so I bought it. Gasket set, $78 from Manufacturing Supply, and Manufacturing Supply also had the small end rod bearings. The PTO bearings I bought direct from Polaris. They were about $130, and then JW Snowweld charged me another $160 to inspect the crank, check it over, change those bearings, change the one other bearing. Crank should be good to go. If Josh says it's good, it's good. The ball hone for the cylinders, I spent $47 on that. And then the water pump, I don't want to quote prices for Tim. So you can see as the motor sits here right now, that's $1,300 in major parts, and that doesn't include tax and shipping. When you throw those in, and probably some smalls and little things like recoil rope, I'm sure I'm into it for $1,500 to rebuild this motor. But it'll be worth it. It'll be a great motor and a fun sled to ride. So, with that said, I want to say thanks to everybody for watching. This series is going to continue, and we're going to get the whole sled done, although the snow's already gone for the season, so the first test ride will probably be in dirt, and it's going to be a while till you see it on snow. That's just the time of year it is. But thanks for watching. Hit subscribe. Make sure you're still subscribed, because for some reason YouTube likes to randomly unsubscribe people. No one can explain it. Huge thanks to anybody that shot me a super thanks. Really appreciate you guys. That really helps the channel. It wakes up the YouTube algorithm, and it makes the algorithm go, oh, people like this channel, and then it goes out and promotes it to more people. So much appreciated. And of course, a huge thanks to the patrons, especially in the off season now. The patrons really keep me going and keep me motivated. I could probably just go weeks on end without doing any YouTube videos, but I feel like I owe it to the patrons. So that's why you guys, everybody that's watching, is benefiting from them. So patrons give a little donation each month, $5 or $10 over on Patreon. It's a lot like a YouTube membership, except for it's offsite on Patreon, which has actually been around for a really long time, and it's a trusted website. In return, the patrons get to see all the videos early. They can watch them ad-free on Patreon, and they get patron-only posts, sometimes videos, sometimes pictures or updates of what I got going on. So the patrons really do get some extra stuff there. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you at the swap meets.